So I want to welcome today my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Sue Carter, who has been one of the greatest mentors of my life. She has been so instrumental in the science world, and I'm really proud because I come from the 1960s where females were not really as involved in science and that, and to have someone forge the path like you, Sue, has been very uh, important is not the right word. It's instrumental for the future of women, I believe, in being seen as intelligent human beings as well. I want to give a little bit of a formal introduction to you because, oh my gosh, you have done so much in this world. So you're a distinguished university scientist with Rudy Professor Emerita of biology at the Indiana University, and it's part of the Kinsey, where you were director of Kinsey for many years, which was really, again, you're always sort of in these areas that are forerunners of science progressive thought and encouraging the field to go farther in a most compassionate and intelligent way. You have over 350 papers. Like, how could you know that you're on? I don't know, 26,000 citations of your papers. I mean, it's amazing the work you have done in oxytocin and understanding and helping us understand the female process of birth is so important. And I know you discussed with me how we just don't even begin to understand the birthing process and how much more is needed for it to be a truly compassionate and healthy way of, I don't even know what to say, a healthy way of giving birth in the Western world, because we're not doing such a good job. So with all of that, there is so much more I could say, but I became acquainted with you years ago at a Continuum Movement workshop, and it's something in life about, you meet people and sometimes you just know. And I remember us sitting at the end of the table and we started talking, and I think we've been talking ever since. So I just want to thank you for coming and doing this interview with us today. I guess this is going out to larger than just the Continuum community, and so some may wonder, who the heck am I? I'm Donnalea Van Vleet Goelz. I have my PhD in somatic psychology. I'm the executive director of Continuum Movement. I am a grandmother. I have a lot of different hats, but my most important, I always have felt, is being a grandmother. And I think that that's one of the things that really drew us together, Sue. So what I would like to do is, I'd like to start off, I want to talk about oxytocin, vasopressin, and your work in relationship to Continuum Movement. And you actually know a lot about it because you've taken Continuum Movement. You've been in many classes of mine. But before even that, I think people need to know a little bit about oxytocin. There's a lot of misunderstanding out in the world. So would you just say, if you were to just say something to people in a few minutes, what would you like to say about oxytocin and vasopressin that you don't understand?
Okay, humans exist because of this novel so-called peptide hormone called oxytocin. It evolved, we were told, about 100 to 150 million years ago. So that sounds like a very long time. but in reality, it's one of the most modern molecules in the human body. It came in on top of other hormones that were much more ancient, and most of those other hormones had to do with defending us from threat. Oxytocin sort of layers in on top of that and gives us the capacity to give birth, to lactate, and to be highly social. And that's what makes us human.
And I know from your work, it was always considered more female hormone and everything, but men have it too. And I think it's very important that men understand that they have a, can you talk more up to that?
Well, first, oxytocin really got a bad start because it was considered a female reproductive hormone. It wasn't just female. So something that only had to do with female reproduction was of dubious general importance. However, indeed, you're right. If you measure it in blood, men and women will often have pretty close to the same levels. If you look in the brain and look at where the hormone's distributed, it's different in men and women, but it's very important in men. In both cases, both men and women, oxytocin serves as a protective molecule, an anti-inflammatory, an antioxidant, and a molecule that allows us to use other people to help us protect ourselves. So many species of animals can live pretty much alone once they're out of the mother, out of the egg, wherever they start their existence. But humans are not in that category. We're absolutely dependent on others, usually for at least years. And in truth, we're dependent forever on other people because nobody can live alone with the exception of a few extreme sort of survivalists. We need shelter, food, resources of all kinds. We can't get all of those alone, and we certainly can't build anything that looks like society or civilization without the help of others. So the unique capacity of men and women to cooperate with each other probably depends, at least in part, maybe in large part, on the capacity of oxytocin to allow us to feel safe with others. That's the critical concept. We have a lot of hormones that are there to protect us against danger. We have a lot of neural systems that basically spend most of their time keeping us in a state of fear or threat. And it's only when we can go into the social state and into this physiology that oxytocin gives us that we can have enough sense of safety to think straight, to be have positive cognitive experiences.
I had the privilege to interview your husband and my Dr. Stephen Porges, and he was speaking about how for the first 20 years your works were on parallel tracks but separate, and that last I don't know how many years exactly they have come together. And what you were just saying was exactly it reminds me of what he is talking about, the safety in that. Can you talk more about that?
Steve is very kind in accepting the fact that I dragged him over into this field. He was studying human attention and very mechanical ways of looking at behavior, which I could never do. To me, that was beyond boring. But I also did start in biology, and so I was kind of fascinated by the diversity of life, I guess. But I couldn't, once I saw the surface, I wanted to know what's going on underneath. And once I got down into the brain, which was back in the 1970s, I started doing neuroscience. Um, I realized, oh, this is where the answers are. They're not in the complexity of behavior, which is way too changeable and always moving. It's down a layer or two underneath that, where we start to see what I would think of as general principles and general ideas and things that can be extrapolated beyond the moment to understand other people. Steve was also moving at that same time into the brainstem. He initially worked on the cardiovascular system. He's very mathematical and analytical in his approaches, and he was designing algorithms which were 40 years ahead of their time. Magical formulas for extracting information, but he began also, independently from my work, to try to figure out where that was coming from. And sure enough, as he sometimes says, we met in the brainstem. The oldest parts of the brain from which the vagus emerges and the places that oxytocin acts to affect these safety-like behaviors or danger too, where oxytocin is very adaptive. It won't lead you down a sort of a bad path. It usually will allow you to have pretty accurate ideas of what's safe and what's not. So we wound up there. We haven't totally merged our research. Part of it is just probably me thinking, well, I better still keep a little bit of independence here because it's very likely that people know the polyvagal theory, but they are not the same people who study and understand oxytocin, not yet. They should be. It's one system. It's simply one system. It has different ways we can measure it, but it's all one giant, complex, but very well organized biology that allows us, as I keep saying, to feel safe and at the same time to be ready whenever necessary to immediately avoid danger. So when Donnalea and I were getting ready for today's talk, a big thunderstorm, typical Florida thunderstorm, came by, and she and I are about 2 miles apart, but the sky turned totally black. The thunder was quite loud, at least where I am. And I emailed her and said, maybe we should slow this down until the storm passes. She has a special power. I call it, we'll just share this little secret for your people. Yes, she's telling me not to share. Okay, so whatever Donnalea wants to happen in the non-physical and physical world seems to happen. I am here in Florida because she materialized, both me and Steve, caused us to move our entire lives down here. Now, it helped that my granddaughter is a few miles away in Gainesville, and it also helped that she lives on the ocean, and I have always wanted to be next to the ocean. So we have a beyond belief opportunity to experience nature every moment, and sometimes nature's very noisy.
It was indeed noisy earlier today, but it's funny. I have gotten so used to thunderstorms, having lived through them my whole life, that they don't really bother me, until they're right upon. If lightning's hitting my yard in front, I start paying attention. But I think the calling, Sue, you say it's me, but I have this feeling that there is just something meant to be for all of us coming together and really, how would I put it, the different stimulus of different things. You guys have so many friends that are just amazing friends, and for us all to get together and talk about how somatics is important, how the body is so essential in really when you look at disease processes and stuff. I mean, sometimes, especially mental disease processes, a lot of the science in the past has sort of left it out. It was almost like the chemical, it couldn't be just a chemical imbalance. Well, and that's sort of too easy to say, but it's an imbalance of the nervous system. We're seeing it more and more, and you have a paper or been writing a lot, and I love the name of it. It's Oxytocin is Medicine. So, and you've talked a little bit about it, but could you just elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes, I'm happy to. Remember, I came out of biology, so it's obvious to me that there's an underlying substrate for everything. I was never able to even think about human consciousness. That's something that's out of the realm of biology, or has been. But the physiological states that we can move in and out of are biochemical. There's no one will question that. Those states can be adjusted in a couple of ways. One is with drugs, which I personally don't favor. The alternative is to understand the body, deconstruct it, and to try to figure out how to optimize its functioning. So Donnalea knows, and I'm proud of the fact that I'm 75 years old, younger than the people who are in politics even these days. So it no longer seems so old. But I don't think I ever believed that I would get to this age in such good health. And I really credit my upbringing in the Missouri Ozarks, sort of a survivalist world that I lived in, with the fact that I really had almost no exposure to doctors. And I had a father who would fix things when they broke, except for broken limbs. I don't think he would set a broken limb, but everything else he would just patch it, use a little turpentine, a little of these sort of home remedies, and we went on with life. And he raised 8 children successfully to adulthood. And I came away with a very deep appreciation for the biology, the protective biology that our body has. But of course, I didn't know anything about oxytocin. I didn't know about neurochemicals. Nobody much knew about them when I was growing up. There were a few people inventing the field, and they swung too far in the direction, in my opinion, of pharmaceuticals, way too far. And now we're having to correct that path and come back to the basics of the body. I'm a very big fan of Continuum, because Continuum is based on basic biology. It's based on understanding the biology, using it in positive ways, giving people some control over their own biology. This is the trickiest part. I've realized recently, Donnalea, that we are so tightly physiologically bound to others that it's very difficult for us to knowingly and thoughtfully adjust our body. So ancient philosophies, ancient body techniques like yoga, which allow you to do that, were there. I was always taking some kind of class all my life. Now I don't have time. I'm too busy. It's ironic. But I think we're starting to see that almost all of these different pathways, somatic pathways, lead down to a deep underlying substrate, a set of mechanisms that include the old hormones that I study, the old nerves that Dr. Porges studies, the vagus, and especially the kind of modern mammalian version of it. And there's just a basic story here. It's still emerging. We don't have it all. Nobody, at least of no modern human, The Chinese had some pretty deep understanding of basic biology, but Western medicine went off the path. And then in the 60s, when they got their hands on psychopharmaceuticals, they went even further off of the path. I have taught psychiatry. I was teaching at the University of Illinois twice in my career, medical school, including postdoctoral scientists and clinicians. And we have to unwind a lot of what they were taught, which was just take a symptom, put it with a drug, and you'll be okay. And of course, it didn't work, never worked.
In my dissertation, which you were on my committee, which I don't know if I would have gotten through without you, Sue, and your encouragement, but that was just it. With PTSD, you know, drugs only work while they're taking drugs, and even that, it's really not great results. And as soon as you stop, you're in trouble again. And it's a body problem, and just what you're saying, getting in touch with it as, you know, a way of having an intervention through movement, through meditation, through breathing practices. I mean, that's going to be the answer. And so I look forward. You and I have talked about, you know, working together and doing research on things like continuum movement. And I can't wait till we do that. I know we have talked a little bit, like for instance, I think our breaths and our sounds really are one of the reasons there is such an activation, and activation may be sort of the wrong word, a deactivation of the nervous system in a sense, a calming of the nervous system. Having taken many continuum classes at this point in time, can you describe a little bit more what your feeling has been, why it's helping?
I only met Emily once. I'm really glad I did, because I could see how she had pulled together a lot of knowledge and some kind of unique understanding that she had. Maybe her own experience. I don't know if she was channeling it. I don't know where it came from, but it was powerful. And it came out of her, and it went into Continuum. So Continuum has many, many advantages over some of the other things that we've learned. Let's say Pilates, which is useful for strengthening muscle, but does not allow you to transform your physiological state to a pure relaxation. So what I think goes on, I think this is Oxytocin talking, and Donnalea and I should have done this when she was doing her dissertation, but her committee disapproved of the idea of her researching that which she was also monitoring and helping other people develop. So we didn't do it. I wish we had, and we should, because once you see these common threads, then you start to understand how things can be fixed. Right now, we're using often simply old traditional sort of practices like yoga that are 5,000 years old, or meditations that are probably older than that, much older perhaps. But since we don't understand them, we don't know how to optimize them for modern life. Continuum's pretty optimized, frankly. It's pretty efficient. And it's efficient because it involves both movement and breath. And it lets you sort of go into a relaxed forms of movement rather than restricted ones. So some of the old traditional methodologies for somatic therapy are rather restrictive, and they probably don't work as well as they could because of that. I think you could use Continuum in PTSD, and used correctly would be one of the safest ways to go about helping people, because they're controlling it themselves. They can control the setting. It's really this hormone vasopressin makes you very context dependent because you're always scanning the environment for threat, for something that could hurt you. And that's really what PTSD is all about.
I do have a research project going on at UNF that the two of us, I'm hoping to get more feedback. Steve has given feedback for it and everything, where maybe we really can help, because I am chair of the Military and Veterans Committee out there, and we need to help. We need to help. We can't send people to war and not have some interventions to help calm them back down when they get home.
When I started this work, I underestimated oxytocin as well as everyone else did. And I kept always looking for the alternatives, the negatives. And there are some. But if a person creates a safe environment, this applies especially to therapeutics. If you put people in a safe environment, then their body will move into these physiological states. We may need to help it with movement. We may need to help it with breath, but it can be done. Most people can make this transition with their own bodies without drugs. It's quite feasible, and it's really important to figure it out.
Sue, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, the bottom of my soul, for talking with me today. I'm hoping we'll do more talks, because I think what you bring to the world, your wisdom, your knowledge, is so important. And we just don't understand these things. And so I want your voice out there much stronger. And I'm going to do everything I can to be supportive and helpful for this to happen. And I dearly care about you, love you actually. So thank you.
Thank you.